O my people, listen. I had chosen you for the highest destiny and had entrusted to you the gems of my redemption and my doctrine in the church, flourishing on your soil like a palm tree and a cedar, from which honey and wine flow, and in which all the living who want to receive shelter in the true ark of eternal salvation find shelter. Out of you there had come, as if from a sun, rays of a perfect civilization, for it was the civilization of Christ, which is not robed in discoveries suitable for making life soft and fate cruel, but in holy laws aimed at elevating man, relieving his misery and instructing his ignorance, for they are laws coming from the divine fount of holiness, charity and wisdom. I had given you a mission like mine as the light in the world. You've denied me. New Jerusalem, you've betrayed the Christ and raged against his saints and his prophets, and you are preparing to rage even more. You've put up with the cross and churches as art and as a means to obtain your neo-pagan goals. You have rejected the food to sate your hearts with mire. Just pause for a moment. It seemed to me that here Jesus is either talking about Italy directly, or he's talking about Western Christian civilization generally. Maybe a bit of both. But certainly we can say that our civilization has gone into the mire, as he describes that, and how ours was the civilization of Christ because it was Christendom. The High Middle Ages reached a peak of civilization never seen before. And after that, we see a growth in material prosperity, but we don't see anything but moral decay and the progressive, strange revolutionary movements which come upon us. Not so much the revolutions like the English Civil War, which are religious matters and religion mixed up with Parliament versus King, but the revolutions like the French Revolution or the strange American Revolution, which wanted to overthrow kingship and have a new form of government, which was quite odd. And then we come forward to the Russian Revolution, which is the culmination of all the bile of the 19th century communists. And of course the development of National Socialism and Fascism, where you have the idealisation of the state as God, effectively God, without calling it God. And all the ruin that's come upon us. And as our technological power has grown, we've moved more and more towards that fateful final war, which will devastate the entire human civilization from one end of the globe to the other. But we'll continue with Jesus' words. You've wanted to experience and sample all the mire, and with your corrupt taste, like that of an unclean animal, it now seems sweet to your palate. And lust, abuse of power, ferocity, avidity, deceit, corruption, and Satanism are the dishes with which you cover your table. You draw punishment after punishment after punishment upon yourself, made by your own hands, and inflicted by you upon yourself. And you call upon the one who ruins you, and do not call the one who would still forgive you. I have continued to use mercy after mercy towards you, and have warned you not to turn this mercy of mine to your additional harm by using it for an unworthy purpose. And over again, you have continued to make God's gift a sin by using it for an illicit purpose. Just as the prophet says, the rod has blossomed, pride has sprouted. I'd given you an olive shoot for you to cultivate, so that it would become a leafy branch of justice and peace, informing you that the soil had to be cleared of error, so that my holy shoot would not grow wild on contact with impurity, and not bud into branches and fruit of greater guilt. But you've not listened to the Lord, who as Father and Master was giving you counsel, and the crop has become poison, and pride has given birth to crime, and other crimes will follow, and still others. I thus say to you, that not one of you shall remain without tears. Those who possess and those who are naked shall weep. For those who possess shall lose, and those who are naked shall no longer find anyone to dress them. Famine, the sword, and pestilence shall grasp your bodies with their ropes, and despair and terror the blind souls. Yes, you shall be like the blind, walking in the darkness filled with the ravines and debris, knowing that every step you take may lead you to betrayal and death. You shall walk on ground which seemed to be shaken by a tremendous earthquake, and the earth really does tremble under your steps. For although it is only a planet, it is more of a child of the Creator than you are, and it sees the irate face of God staring at this ground, as when he looked at the children deserving of the flood and fire, and he gets agitated in its depths with fear over its punishment. Material and intellectual values are thrown into disorder and stripped of their proper substance. Knowledge has become an obstacle and not a help. Even that holy knowledge of God has become a condemnation, because though knowing him, you deny him. Light and word stick in your throats, unable to descend to enlighten and nourish the spirit, for the noose of your perverse passions keeps you from receiving them. On seeing the collapse of the idols of mud, which you'd set up in place of the true God, you shall know you have worshipped uncleanness, and shall no longer have faith. No more faith in anything, neither the true or the false. And to punish the deniers, those without faith, the haters of the Roman Christ, shall come upon them, the wicked of the earth, those ever closer to Satan, the demolishers of the cross, not so much on the domes of temples, as inside the hearts that still bear in themselves a trace of my sign. Just a pause there. The phrase, haters of the Roman Christ. Very interesting that Jesus uses that phrase. But we have to understand that what is coming soon, this is 1943, we're soon to have the German army occupying, controlling Italy after the fall of Mussolini. And that brings added dangers to the headquarters of the Catholic Church, and therefore to the Catholic Church itself, and therefore to the Church of Christ itself. The haters are the Nazi regime. Those who would say, oh, Hitler was a Catholic, or they supported the Catholic Church supported them, it's the most stupid thing one can say, the most historically ignorant thing one could say. But never mind that. Let's look at this phrase, Roman Christ. A Protestant will be apoplectic at this. So they're now saying that Christ is a Roman Catholic. No. Our Christ, the true Christ, established the Roman Catholic Church. Or as I prefer to say, the Catholic Church, because that phrase Roman Catholic Church, though legitimate, is misused by Protestants to say that there's a Roman Catholic Church and there is something called the Catholic Church separate from it. I've dealt with that issue in Hyde Park. It's as if the Catholic Church existed in antiquity back from the time of the Apostles onwards, but the Roman Catholic Church is some kind of new innovation, a papist innovation. Absurd. There were never two churches, there's just the one church. But this phrase, Roman Christ, what is Jesus getting at? Well, he's basically saying that Christ is of Rome. He established the Catholic Church, and its headquarters, the church headquarters, is in Rome. And that's where he, Christ, wanted it to be. That was the plan of God. But there are haters of this Roman Christ. They want a Christ that's not of the Catholic Church. They want a Christ that's separate from the church, a Christ of their own making. There was an attempt in Germany during the war to make a German Christianity. Hitler was so disinterested in Christianity, he would not even accept that. His was like full-on 20th century paganism. But we must understand the phrase Roman Christ carefully. That is, we Catholics must know that Christ unites himself to his church. I think Pope St. John the 23rd said that between the Catholic Church and Christ there's no difference. And we can say that's true because St. Paul himself says the church is the body of Christ. And Pope Pius XII produced an encyclical called Mystici Corporis Christi. The Catholic Church is the body of Christ. I'll continue now. Now Jesus begins to address the Pope. And because it's 1943, that's Pope Pius XII. And you, the new Peter, watch and watch without deluding yourself. It is true that to suffer for Christ is a dignity surpassed by no other. But I tell you, watch and pray. In the hours of a great storm, it is necessary not only to have a purple banner high on the mast, but for the hand of Peter to be healthier and surer than ever at the helm. The disorienter makes use of everything to cause confusion. And in the hours of a gale which assails on all sides to sink the holy values, hated by the perverted in a shipwreck, it is enough for the hands to be removed for an instant through an irreparable misfortune from the wheel of the tiller, in order for the waves to come athwart the mystical boat more forcefully. Watch over yourself, so that you may watch over others. Peter, now more than ever, it is necessary for you to feed these lambs of mine, and these little sheep of mine. There is no one but you that remains as a holy shepherd. And if you fall, many lambs will be led by imprudent sheep outside the pastures, and other shepherds with wicked doctrines will work their way even into my dominion to contaminate it with their human, and to say human is indeed a merciful judgment, pressures. No, this is not the time to die for Christ. This is the time to watch, defend, instruct, and act as a barrier against what seeks to enter to corrupt ever more broadly and deeply. And believe me, O Christ on earth, believe me, the sore is already gnawing deeply and obscuring minds and hearts, and as the misfortune of misfortunes, extinguishing the lanterns which had been placed on the mountain tops, so that they would illuminate the way for the pilgrims seeking heaven. Many are already extinguished, many are smoking, many languish, and others are preparing to languish. If the faithful are icy, the pastors are cold, and the death of the spirit comes by frostbite. An imperceptible death, bringing on a sleep without the light of resurrection. Consider this, O Christ on earth, born to such a destiny, and without growing weary, insist, preach, exhort, reproach, and evangelize. There are too many temples in which the gospel has lost value, and too many hearts that hear an untrue sound in the gospel which separates them from it. Like the first Peter, make up for the deficiencies of ministers, and cause the throngs to hear again through your lips the sweet, holy and salutary doctrine of Christ, and cause those not yet slain to be saved and come back to me, and peace to return to this earth, on which there is not a clump of sod which does not know the dew of the martyrs. And that's the end of Jesus' dictation, and effectively not just to Maria Valtorta, but aimed directly at Pope Pius XII.